Hello, everybody. It's Zane with Sailing Views. Today I have Katie Pettibone. She is an amazing sailor. I've met her years ago doing Olympics, but you might know her from America's Cup, Olympics, you name it. All kind of fun stuff. This lady has been everywhere. She is a serious on the water talent and just a great person to know. Good friend of mine. So, how you doing, Katie?
I'm good. Sunday morning here in Sacramento, California. And I say Sunday because it's like every day I think I have to remind myself of which day of the week it is.
Yeah,
It's just
trust
falling
me.
apart.
If I didn't have a kid schedule to pick up, all these days are running together, and yeah, it's hard to keep it all straight. Okay, so let me just go ahead and jump right into the questions. Uh,
Great.
what age were you when you started sailing, and how did that come out? How did that start?
Yeah, so it's funny with my sailing history. My family sailed, so I was one of those that was in my mother's stomach while they were on sailboats. So I grew up sailing. Funnily enough, like most kids, though, I did try to rebel and get away from sailing and do other sports, and I enjoyed them immensely: soccer, volleyball, horseback riding. But I ended up getting drawn back to sailing because of a couple of reasons. One, I could compete against guys, which I found I couldn't in soccer. I would
Hmm.
love to have had a co-ed league, but that wasn't the case. And then I also like sailing with people of all variety of ages, and I really enjoyed meeting people and spending time, men, women, different professions. And then third, of course, the travel. Yeah, I grew up in Port Huron, Michigan, and so we had some wonderful regattas up and down the coast in Canada and Michigan and down in Ohio and Put-in-Bay.
Put in
And so
May.
it was just a wonderful lifestyle. And I kind of go back to, I mean, the way I grew up, it was a lifestyle. We took trips on the boat for holidays and stuff like that. And I do think that's kind of the thing that really draws people in. I got into racing because of a competitive streak, but I think I always would have liked sailing no matter what, because there's just nothing like being on a boat out in the middle of the lake or the ocean looking at the stars.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just special.
I gotcha. All right, so obviously your family got you started. Who helped inspire you, or who influenced you? Who got you, really diving into it?
So there were two guys that were heavy duty racers in Port Huron that inspired me to really compete heavily.
Hmm.
Glenn Hummel and Jay Jones. And Glenn is a environmental engineer in Detroit. He still races. And Jay is an engineer. I don't know where he ended up. I might be in Texas. But they got me inspired to race locally out of the Port Huron Yacht Club and out of Sarnia Yacht Club. But I think taking the next step was, for many of us, it's all about mentors and seeing somebody who could do it. And I remember I was a senior in high school, I think, and I went to see Dawn Riley speak at Michigan State, and she had just done Maiden.
Hmm.
And so she did this huge presentation and videos and things like that. And I just remember being awestruck, and I thought, wow, she's made a go of it. She's been a professional. She had run Leading Edge, a boat out of Detroit, a 50-footer during the height of the 50-foot circuit.
Hmm.
And I remember meeting her, and she was great, because Dawn's all about enabling and promoting and encouraging. And then, of course, the fact that when I met her, I was taller than her. I was like, gosh, I'm even taller than her. I can do this.
I
But
gotcha.
yeah, so it was funny. It would take a while for me to actually get the chance to work with Dawn, because I would go off to college down in University of Miami, Florida, and she went off to do more herself. But then we would eventually end up competing and got to be like very, very close friends during the 1995 All Women's America's Cup team.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have anything else to say to that. All right, so all right, so like you, I played a lot of sports, and then just dug back into sailing. Grant, I wasn't even good at them. I think that's why I gravitated towards sailing. But at what point did you realize you were pretty good?
You know, I don't, it's so funny because I don't never think I never thought I was that particularly good. I always was trying to get better. I always wanted to be better, and I always wanted to learn more. And I always felt like, um, there was so much to learn to be better. So it's kind of funny that you asked that question. And maybe it's just a personal thing because I even find it now. I work in the legislative process, and I go before committee hearings, and I have to present on in very in depth stuff. And I always, even in the morning, like I'll get up early. I'll work really hard, but I'll still get up early because I always feel like I'm never good enough and that I need to do more and
Wow.
to prepare. And so I think for sailing, I don't know that I think that I'm that great. I think that I've actually got a problem where I'm always trying to be better, and nothing's ever good
Good enough.
enough.
Okay. Well, that is definitely a very humble question or answer. A lot of people are like, "Yeah, in college I was great. At 10, I was great." You know, I hear a lot of different answers. That's one of the most humble ones I've heard. All right. So, what is your favorite boat and why? And I know you've been on a ton of them, but pick your favorite.
That's a really tough question,
Of
and I
course it
have
is. Yeah.
actually I've gotten that question. Um, and it's funny because I guess this would be the same for car fanatics. I
Hmm.
have certain boats that I like for certain reasons. I mean, I have to say that sailing the IACC boats that we used in the America's Cup and the night that started 90. Well, they started 92, but they went all the way through to 2007
Yeah.
where it's funny. I just like the precision of it and everything we did and fighting for every tenth of a knot. I loved that aspect of chasing perfection, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, I look back at how narrow they got by the end of the 2007 Cup and how fun it was to be sailing, 19 degrees to true wind there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we dragged around 19-ton underneath, so we didn't go super fast downwind. But I enjoyed that. Now, on the other hand, I think back to the boats that we did around the world, and they've certainly got better now with canting keels and such. But I remember, looking at how wide they were, especially the back ends and the
Mm.
surfing and the big wave surfing, and that was so fun. When the boat was balanced, you could drive it with one hand, and it was extraordinarily fun. And then of course catamarans. There's nothing like because I ride motorcycles. There's nothing like
Yeah.
standing out on the side of that thing going 26 knots.
Yeah.
It's kind of like riding a motorcycle at 100 miles an hour, and it's
It's a
super
thrill.
fun.
Yeah, it's definitely a thrill. All right. Well, I know you've traveled all around the world, literally a couple hundred times. What is your favorite place to sail?
Favorite place to sail? Again, I hate to dodge that one a little bit, but it kind of goes to the conditions and the boats we were sailing. I
Hmm.
would say consistently the best place I've enjoyed sailing is Biscayne Bay down in Miami, just because it's consistently beautiful, warm,
Yeah.
good breeze, tricky. It's just great. And of course, I went to University of Miami, so I spent so much time there. It's just a place I love.
Yeah.
But sailing in the Southern Ocean on the big waves is just super fun. The problem is the cold.
Yeah.
Sailing in Sardinia again, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You sail wonderful yachts. It's a great place to be. But so there's different places I like, but I just really love Biscayne Bay.
Wow. I like Biscayne Bay. I've sailed there a lot. I know you and I both lived down there a long time. Um, I love the sailing, but I'm not a big fan of the city. you
Oh,
know,
I
the,
know it's gotten
the,
terrible.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a trade off. It seems like that everywhere you go.
Yep.
One of my
Yep.
favorite places is in Fort Walton Beach, and
Oh, yeah.
not many people have been there, but that's where Randy Smythe lives and a bunch of other
Yep.
friends of mine, the Harrison fan, Craig Willis, and for some reason I love that place.
Yep.
I don't know. All right,
Yep.
so let's move on to where do you see sailing going in the future? What's coming?
Um,
What?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question, and certainly I know it seems like every sailing convention seminar that I've gone to recently, the last couple of years, is it's a point of conversation, as our lives have gotten so busy and we're looking for quick moments of enjoyment. Sailing has never been a quick moment of enjoyment.
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
not like you roll up, throw your stuff down, and you go out for an hour. I mean, you can, I suppose, if you have, and this goes to what Tucker Thompson's often been talking about, these fleets of boats that are available and taken care of, and you walk down the dock and you jump in and you go.
Mhm.
But we've kind of gotten away from the notion of what sailing was about, which was taking time to get out on the water and spend some time unplugged.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we see it going. I think we do have to promote it as a lifestyle. We do have to promote the racing and the enjoyment, but it is a thing that is obviously very eco-friendly. And one of the things I love about sailing is that if you run out of fuel, you don't need it to get someplace.
Yeah.
You're quite safe. And so I don't know. I will say I'm excited about, and this we might get to this question later, but I'm excited about in the sporting context of certainly where the IOC is going with promoting male and female sailing together. It's
Yeah.
one of the few sports that you can do it. And having done some sailing and work in the Middle East with Oman Sails, Omani women's team, I've just seen incredible things come from that. And so I really hope that we continue to see that.
All right. That's a very good answer. That's definitely one of the best answers I've had. Um, okay. What's your best regatta? I mean, if you have one good regatta that stands out, and I know the America's Cup, the Whitbread, I know you've done so many good things. What really just stands out as the most fun you've had?
Um, I that is an impossible one to answer again for various reasons. There's been particular races in the America's Cup that you just will always stick in your mind. Like the very first one we had in the 1995 with the All Women's America's Cup team, where it was a first race of the first round robin, and we're going up against Stars and Stripes, and DC had been bagging us and saying all kinds of terrible things.
Yeah.
And so, that was kind of where it was fish or cut bait. And the world was watching because it was like, is this just a show, a carnival show, or is this a real sports team? And so I remember going into that race, and back in those days when we had all the fun pre-start maneuvers, we both entered, and then, DC got on the back of the boat there and was like standing there with his hands on his hips, like trying to intimidate us. And I was like, what the hell is he doing? As if. And so, sure enough, we ended up, and I think they took the classic tack, of underestimating your opponent. They, up that first beat, they threw a bunch of tacks at us, and we destroyed them. Like, we out-tacked them, and we were ahead of them. And that was after 27 tacks in these big 80-foot boats. And so, it was pretty extraordinary. We won that race. And of course, as many people who follow history know, the end was far from done. But that will always stick out as one of those great moments where you have this team of 16 people come together in this perfect unison. It's pretty special.
Yeah. Well, I know I was rooting for you guys.
Thanks.
All right. Next question. Let's see. What was that? That was best regatta. What's your worst regatta or worst trip?
Oh man. Well, that one's pretty easy because that's still fresh. At least fresh for me. That would be in 2016, the U.S. Olympic trials. We had two events on the NACRA 17. U.S. sailing, and rightfully so, had kind of taken the tack to having our trials be part of big international regattas. Mm-hmm. So I was sailing the NACRA 17 with Mike Easton, and of course, in reference to your knee question, that was the year. Well, 2015 was when we had a crash in Spain sailing. Well, that might have been the worst one. No, I don't care about the knee. 15 is when the knee got destroyed. They sent us out in 40 knots in the NACRAs, or gusts to 40, and we got we flipped, and he landed on my knee and punched it into the side of the hull, and it drove the tibia back under the femur, tearing ligaments.
Yeah.
So brutal. Anyway, so, I sailed for the next 8 months or whatever it was with the knee that I used tape to hold together. And, it was excruciating by the end. But so we go into the first trials, and it was, funnily enough, in Biscayne Bay at the Miami OCR. And we just had a shocker. We couldn't do anything right. Our boat wasn't great. We were fixing it the night before because it had a manufacturing defect with NACRA, which they denied could happen, and then they're there looking at it going, yeah, I guess it did. Yeah. But, it was just one of those deals where just everything that could go wrong didn't go wrong. We were one of the favorites going into getting the slot to go to Rio. And it just felt like, this hand from above just said, not going to be your time. And so we had a shocker. And we redeemed ourselves at the second part of the trials, which was the Worlds. And we got a 17th at the Worlds and missed out by going to Rio by 1 point. And so It was
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
that is heartbreaking. The Olympics are just such an emotional toil that you go through. You train forever. You got a short window to get selected, and then you either win or don't.
You
And
go or you don't, yeah. And
it's
you've spent every last cent that you own,
yeah,
and in my case, my knee.
yeah. You blew up your body doing it. A lot of us have. Back. I'm sure you remember years ago when we were sailing with weight jackets.
Oh
For
yes.
for me and lasers, I was one of the lighter guys, and I'd strap that thing on at 8 knots of wind. And of course, as soon as I strapped mine on, the big guys strapped theirs on. So it's diminishing. It didn't help, but all it did was wreck my knees, my
Oh,
ankles, my
your
back.
back,
Yeah.
yeah.
So fun things like that. Gotta love the Olympics. All right. So what's the most interesting thing you've seen floating by?
Ooh, the most interesting thing is I mean, I haven't seen. I mean, interesting. I wouldn't consider trash. It was interesting to me at when we did the Around the World race. Different countries have different types of trash, and that became very like from an intellectual perspective. It
Mm,
won't surprise you to know that the U.S. is plastic bags and plastic in the water there. But to me, and I know it's not an unusual thing for anybody who goes to sea. I still marvel at the sunfish. I mean, they're
yeah.
such weird looking like animals, and they have their little fin that kind of waves
Uh,
around, and I think those to me are the most interesting. I just can't conceive that nature created this thing. They're
yeah.
so strange,
And they're huge. Yeah.
and they're huge, and they don't move fast, so you really have to watch trying to hit them.
Right. Okay. So what's your favorite role on a boat? Or what's your best role? What are you really good at?
I think my favorite role, just because I've spent so much time doing it. I mean, I really enjoy driving a lot, but I
Mm,
love creeping around, trying to get every last tenth knot out of the boat, whether it's
yeah.
trimming, driving, just watching the targets, thinking about balance. And so I mean, speed. I always love focusing on speed. What can we be doing better? A little more of this, a little more of that. What about the rake? Whatever
Mm,
it is, I enjoy that. Focusing on the crossover. Certainly around the world, you have so many. Well, we had so many sails that we could play with. That was super satisfying for me.
yeah. Yeah. I love being a floater as well. All right. Do you consider yourself conservative or aggressive when you're racing?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I don't think I've ever considered either. I
Huh.
think I think probably more conservative. I mean, I don't. I think of it in terms of risk to benefit. So if
Right.
something is going to really, I can be very aggressive. Like I'm happy to take a flyer. So from that perspective, if I really believe in it. But on the other hand, when it comes to a crowded mark rounding and the potential of sticking it in, like the getting hammered with protests or getting booted out, I'd rather take your lumps, find the hole, even if it means a big duck,
Hmm.
and not end up in the protest room. So from that perspective, I'm conservative.
Okay. All right. What's the best maneuver? I know you talked about the America's Cup uh, race with DC, but do you have one maneuver that sticks out in your mind? A great start, great mark rounding. Something where you pass 20 boats, or just some incredible one little moment of a snapshot of a race.
I don't think I necessarily have a particular maneuver. I think having a plan and a kick-ass leeward mark rounding can be the winner and loser for so many people.
Hmm.
So I think we on the cup we used to call it the Mexican, where you would basically have the kite ready to come down, and then jive and it all come
Yeah.
right into the middle. Was one of those that just were just so seamless and so fun. So I really enjoyed that, and a lot of people, I think some Kiwis call it, or maybe Aussies call it the Zambuca. I mean, there's a bunch of different things people call that maneuver, but
Yeah.
it doesn't require really having to have a super slick takedown line that pulls it into the boat like we see
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I know we do those nonstop in the Melges. That's part of the standard requirement.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, what's your best program, your favorite program that you've been involved with? Be it Olympic campaign, America's Cup, Whitbread, or just some big perf boat, or it could even been, whatever, Europe sailing. I
Yeah.
don't know. Just what's your
Yeah.
favorite program?
I think my favorite program I would have to say was the 1995 Women's America's Cup team.
Yeah.
Sorry, my phone, I forgot to mute.
Oh, that's all
It
right.
was just
Mine will
that
go off.
it was, I mean, it was just this incredible effort by a bunch of different individuals that came together. We didn't know each other, and just learning so much about professionalism and individuality and coming together as a team. And by the end, how it was one seamless unit. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just an extraordinary experience. And of course, all of that was because Bill Koch believed in us, and he gave us the resources. And as you know, and all of us know, resources is half the battle.
Yeah. Yeah. That definitely plays a huge part in it. Sailing unfortunately isn't a cheap sport.
Mm.
Um, well, since we're talking America's Cup, what do you think about the new version of America's Cup? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you prefer the old dial-ups, or are you just shocked by the new foiling? What are your thoughts?
Um, I'm fascinated by the technology that went behind these boats that I
Mm-hmm.
think, well, many people thought probably couldn't work, but it is. I mean, it is working now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the wave of the future. I mean, I loved the old IACC boats because it was so could translate to everybody's regular sailing, and so much of our technology did come down the
Mm-hmm.
pipeline to everybody. And the game of inches. I mean, I remember us doing dial-ups and swinging sterns that were, within inches of each other. That precision, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the reasons I love sailing those boats. On the other hand, I love sailing catamarans, and I loved what they did with the catamarans, especially by the end, where they actually did start to have some engagement. I
Yeah.
think just this notion of having people go out to a ley line tack and it's just whoever's fastest is kind of like, well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of fun, but you know
Yeah.
could be a different type of venue for that. So but I do think, I know certainly people have talked about American Magic's ideas if they were to win it, and they've talked about going back to some sort of monohull that
It's normal.
is
Yeah.
more traditional.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Um, what are your future plans in sailing? Do you have any, or are you just waiting for everything to get over and then restart, or what have you got coming down the pipeline?
Well, good question. Obviously, from the America's Cup, I have an old shoulder injury that is, now that I'm getting old, is bugging me. So I'm probably going to take the opportunity to get that fixed. But after that, I'm going to go for the 2024 Olympics if they keep the offshore mixed gender class.
Yeah.
That obviously is right up my alley, and it looks like a lot of fun, and it's something that I think I would enjoy. That
Yeah.
being said, back to the resource piece, it's super expensive.
Oh yeah.
I don't actually know how fiscally, countries like Great Britain and Australia and New Zealand will get it done, but others are going to struggle with it.
Yeah.
And certainly here, we don't have the money to fund our athletes, so I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. Obviously going to have to do a lot of fundraising. I do want to get back sailing catamarans more, so
Mm-hmm.
that's a big goal. I'd like to do some more ACAT stuff and also F-18.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just get back into having fun again.
Yeah. On the offshore thing in the future, I'd read somewhere, and it might have been a hoax, but they were pushing for doing it, like kind of an older group where you get a 2 hour bonus if everybody's over 50 or something like that. I was like, this is right up my alley. It's falling in line. The first thing I'm thinking is I love offshore sailing. I've done a lot of it. I'm like, perfect. But then I'm thinking, all right, how much is the price of a boat? I'm like, okay. Back in the days, I couldn't afford a laser sail. I still couldn't, much less, you know,
Yeah,
what the price is going to be for this. So,
right.
um, all right. Well, with all of that said, what do you think about the state of women's sailing? And I know you're very involved in it. So, what's your opinion?
Oh, I mean, it's funny to me because, as you can see, I mean, I was growing up sailing and racing locally when there weren't necessarily a ton of women racing. Certainly not professionally. Like Dawn was one of the first.
Yeah,
I know Annie Gardner was doing amazing stuff, but it
yeah,
wasn't like it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And so it's funny to me because I think things have really come a long way. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't come along way further, right? Like we still
Right,
need a
right.
lot. And I know that um, what was it, the study that World Sailing did, showed some, inequities and
Hmm.
et cetera. And yeah, there's so much to be done, but I do think it's happening. And I think that women are now, as they're getting into it, and certainly young girls, there's no notion that they can't or that there's no pathway. I mean, the
Yeah,
Olympic sailors are phenomenal. We're seeing more women get involved in these other classes. And sure, like when you look at the Super Series 52, there is nobody, there's like maybe two,
yeah,
and so there's a huge hole there. But again, I think it's like we need to get some boats get women on there kicking ass, and then it takes care of itself.
yeah.
Um,
Now, do with that said, do you think women should be just straight up forced to go head to head with men, or do you think they should be separate? Or, I have an idea what your opinion would be, but what are your thoughts? Should
I mean,
women,
I,
you
I,
know?
I know, well, if it comes down, the thing is, everyone gets back to this: is should we have quotas? And I don't believe in quotas, but I do like the idea of encouraging. And so
Hmm.
when Volvo did what they did, where they said, "Hey, you can have more people if you
Yeah,
want to add women to your crew," it became a no-brainer to do it. And then it allows people to get skill sets, and then they can take on others. But it allowed, if you really didn't want to have women on your boat, you didn't have to.
right.
So I like that approach. I do think we need to have opportunities for women to get those skill sets, because
Yeah,
it's funny to me whether it's in business or the arena that I work in or sailing. There is a point where women aren't necessarily as pushy as guys, and
yeah.
we always again want to overskill ourselves. I remember reading a study where it was like, they looked at a bunch of women in the corporate world and whether they would go for a job or not. Did they have the skills or not? Men tend to go for jobs that they don't
Ah,
have skills, and women were like, "Oh no, I'm not good enough. I need to get more prepared."
mhm.
And so I do think that that is something that inherently we still see. Women want to be, before they take a leap on something, they really want to have all the skills and really know they do. And guys are a little bit more willing to say, "Fuck it, I'm
Yeah,
in." so
yeah,
so I do think we need to have those opportunities where, whether it's clubs saying, "Hey, today we're going to have this Wednesday night beer can race. All the boats have to have women on board," and it's a fun thing, right?
yeah,
But it's, and it's just giving them that opportunity. Or there's been some wonderful times where, and you've probably seen it in your clubs, where boat owners will say, "We're going to have the women race this boat for this regatta or
yeah,
this race," and it really gives people a chance to do things, and it's fun to see it. I think when I've coached those types of situations, it's empowering, it's fun, and it reminds me that often, and this goes back to the future of sailing. Sailing really does need to be a lifestyle, and there has to be a social fabric, because that's what
yeah,
draws families. And certainly, I think it's a big deal for women. And I really saw that when I was in the Persian Gulf with the Omani girls team. By the end of it was a hard race for them. It was basically like the Tour de Voile, but in the Persian Gulf.
yeah,
And these were young Omani girls that didn't have this notion of I can be anything I want to be and I want to be a professional athlete. But by the end, they loved it, and they were like, had no problem thinking they could go compete against the guys. But what was really, they said it to me, and I said, "What's the best thing?" And they're like, "We have a new family. You're family to us." And so for
yeah,
them, it was a social fabric that made all the difference for them to race. And I
yeah,
think that's something that we have to make sure that as we go forward, we include.
yeah. That's great points. All right, so what are your ideas on how we can grow the sport?
Well, I think I go back to that. I think
It's
we want
just
to make it a family affair. We want to make it a place where you can have your competitive outlets.
yeah,
Um, but I also think it has to be, the social part of it. That's what we all love. I mean, that's, when you talk about people going crazy right now during quarantine, it's because they're missing their social,
outlet.
connection.
Yeah,
And so I think that we've got to really kind of get back to that. And then of course, costs. Immediately in the next couple of years, as we all try to recover from this quarantine, we got to make sure it's affordable. So,
yeah,
and I think it's going to be an ongoing concern, because as you and I were just, talking, whether it's Olympics or whether it's, buying a new sail, it's expensive.
oh
It's
yeah,
not a cheap sport. It's not like tennis where you can go buy a racket, tennis balls, and some shoes and go hit the court.
yeah. All right. So here's an oddball question. What's the scariest moment you've had on the water?
It's scary. It's not an oddball question. It's one actually that caused me to go to law school.
Okay.
So, and I wasn't really, it wasn't that scary from the perspective that the worst outcome was going to be something that was terrible, because I'm not afraid to die. But wouldn't have chosen that as my exit. And that was, had done the 2000, was it 2000? 2000, Sydney to Hobart on a FAR 55 with my boyfriend, David Blanchfield, AAK, the Rat.
Yeah.
And so we had finished Hobart. It wasn't a much fun of a race. I did actually get seasick one of the 2 times in my life that I've gotten seasick. I couldn't believe it. And so we were going to bring the boat back. And it was supposed to be this wonderful, relaxing tour. We'll stop in Wine Glass Bay, and then no rush. We, take our time. And then all of a sudden, he had a tryout with Prada to do the Next America's Cup, so it became a rush. And we picked up 2 guys in Hobart. One was a sailor, but one was kind of a newbie sailor, and they were helping us deliver it. So we're going along, and sure enough, this, massive weather pattern comes through, and now we're in a rush, you see, because he's got to get back to.
Got to get back, and all of a sudden you're getting hammered. Yeah.
And I'm saying, WTF? This wasn't the way it was supposed to be. And so we leave Eden, which is just the last. If you're going down to Hobart, it's the last stop before you cross the bay,
right?
Or that area of open water. And we'd already crossed that. We were on our way up back to Sydney, and but it was like terrible weather, right? Terrible weather. And we had wind against the current, so it was
huge
awful.
Waves. Yeah, big waves.
And so we're on Port Pack going out, and I'm almost like, this is total bullshit. And so we tacked it, and the waves were getting bigger and bigger because we're getting into stronger currents. So it's time to tack. So we tacked back, and I went to release the runner to leeward, and I hear David say, "Oh, hang on." And next thing you know, we had a rogue wave sending us backwards down the wave.
Oh.
And I was in the boat rolled. I didn't do a full 360, but it basically laid down, and I was underwater, trapped. And so I'm underwater, and I'm trying to fight my way out. And it wouldn't surprise you, the pressure. It was like me being a fly. I remember thinking so I'm like, this is what a fly feels like. And it was dark, and you're like, I heard this thunderous crack, and I thought, holy shit, the mast is coming down on me. And I just remember thinking, well, this will be interesting. I mean, there's nothing I can do, but I was like, well, this is not really what I wanted for my life to be only about sailing. And so the boat finally righted. I could see daylight coming, and I'm like, oh, well, at least I'm on, I'm hooked in. I'm going to be water skiing behind the boat, basically, right? Because I'm going to get washed out. And I looked under my arm, and I could see the rudder floating away. That was the crack.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had somehow my arm got hammered, and I pulled. I'm like, okay, I gotta move, and I'm like upside down on the back corner pulpit, and I pulled my my tether up, and the pressure had bent the tether open.
Wow.
So if I'd been washed out, they wouldn't have been able to get me because they had no way to drive the boat.
Yeah. Oh Lord, that's the overallness, scariness of that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to do some other things. So it was a lot of
cool. All right. Well, next question is, what's your best advice to new people? People who want to get into it, or
Yeah. My best advice to people is, don't be afraid. Go talk to people. Be open to learning. Ask questions. Sail on all kinds of boats. Have fun. And if it's not fun, then try to get on a different boat. It's supposed to be fun. And so, you got to just go and do it. And if you wait for the invitation, it's not going to happen. You got to go make yourself open and tell people you'll show up. I mean, I was always surprised at how often people can get really good rides if they just commit. I mean, people are flaky. You know, when you
Yeah.
have like you know, we're going to race and do all these races, and then somebody's like, oh, I'm not, you know, I've got other things to do today. Well, I mean, I'm not going to invite them back, and I wouldn't, you know, expect other people to get invited back. So if you just commit and are there and, you know, are reliable, it's amazing the fun you can have.
Yep. Okay, well, you've heard all the questions. You've heard this little interview. The last one is, do you have anything to add? What else do you have to add to all this?
I don't know. I think we covered it.
Yeah.
I just hope that, you know, we as sailors in this wonderful sport, and like I said, lifestyle. I hope that we continue to bring in new people and make it as available as possible to everybody, because sometimes, you know, when you see boats out on the water, people don't know how to access it. And so to the extent that we can grow it to people who didn't grow up in yacht clubs like me or others, I think that is going to serve us best to growing the sport.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Hey, thank you, Katie. This was
Thank
great.
you.
I love talking to you. You're always a lot of fun.
Good talking with you.
Yep, and everybody who's watching the channel, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit all those buttons on the bottom. Come back. We got a new video every day. Katie Pettibone, incredible. You just heard some of the stories. I assure you she has more. So if you see her in the water park, always walk up and say hi. Okay,
Thank
with
you.
that, I'll see you later. Over,
All right,
out,
have a
and
good
bye-bye.
Sunday.
Yep.